PyPI was subpoenaed. We have waited for the string of subpoenas to subside, though we were committed from the beginning to write and publish this post as a matter of transparency, and as allowed by the lack of a non-disclosure order associated with the subpoenas received in March and April 2023. That's suspiciously specific. Sounds to me like they also received some other subpoenas they aren't allowed to talk about. Yep, I was thinking the same thing. What a beautiful way of communicating that. What a weird way to think about such events. Such subpoenas are clandestine surveillance of citizens by their state. The problem with such types of surveillance in particular is the lack of accountability. How does the ethical use of this problematic tool get ascertained? Where and how is the democratic oversight implemented? How is misuse treated and prevented? As a foreigner, in terms of the U.S., I've never understood how these gag orders are compatible with the First Amendment. Often there's posts on HN about how the UK and all other Western European countries are totalitarian because they don't have unrestricted free speech, but then apparently the police, FBI, can restrict the free speech of Americans without any court involvement at all? I really don't understand. Civil rights, including those in the First Amendment, are not absolute. Regarding speech, you also can't harass people, threaten them, defraud them, incite violence, distribute copyrighted information that isn't yours, interfere with others' activities, sing loudly in a movie theater, etc. Private entities such as your employer can restrict your speech in many ways. Often there's posts on HN about how the UK and all other Western European countries are totalitarian because they don't have unrestricted free speech. I haven't seen these posts. Do you have an example handy? Then following up on Blibble's question. What is the difference to the UK and other Western countries that mostly also have free speech with what looks to me very similar restrictions? Honest question. Like Blibble, I don't really understand it either. Civil rights, including those in the First Amendment, are not absolute. Regarding speech, you also can't harass people, threaten them, defraud them, incite violence, distribute copyrighted information that isn't yours, interfere with others' activities, sing loudly in a movie theater, etc. Private entities such as your employer can restrict your speech in many ways. So the First Amendment is basically just the demo. And other Western countries, oft criticized, just didn't have as nice a demo as that, but offer more or less the same features and gameplay. That's only true if you have a very surface-level understand of law and how it attempts to solve real-world problems. It's nice to say, all speech should be free, in theory, but then, when faced with a situation where a mob boss says, "Please go kill that person," or ringleader whips up a mob into a riot, should a judge just say, well, he was just exercising his First Amendment rights, and ensure no consequences befall that person? A person enters my home and says things I find offensive. Should the First Amendment prevent me from removing that person from my home for that reason? I decide to leak trade secrets of my employer for profit. Should the First Amendment protect me from being fired and sued for this? You seem to be misunderstanding the First Amendment. CSMA, classified information, defamation, copyright, etc. are all not permitted under the First Amendment. Not to mention that gag orders are approved by a court and can be appealed. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Seems pretty clear to me, at least for gag orders, less so for the other stuff you mentioned. Could you argue pirated Disney movies are speech? Probably not. And the writers of the First Amendment went on to pass the Sedition Act of 1798. That if any person shall write, print, utter, or publish, or shall cause or procure to be written, printed, uttered or published, or shall knowingly and willingly assist or aid in writing, printing, uttering or publishing any false, scandalous and malicious writing or writings against the government of the United States, or either House of the Congress of the United States, or the President of the United States, with intent to defame the said government, or either House of the said Congress, or the said President, or to bring them, or either of them, into contempt or disrepute, or to excite against them, or either or any of them, the hatred of the good people of the United States, or to excite any unlawful combinations therein, for opposing or resisting any law of the United States, or any act of the President of the United States, done in pursuance of any such law, or of the powers in him vested by the Constitution of the United States, or to resist, oppose, or defeat any such law or act, or to aid, encourage or abet any hostile designs of any foreign nation against the United States, their people or government, then such person, being thereof convicted before any court of the United States having jurisdiction thereof, shall be punished by a fine not exceeding $2,000, and by imprisonment not exceeding 2 years. Welcome to America. Our laws contradict each other and it's all about politics. The Supreme Court figures out where the line is drawn and what is, or isn't, legal according to the Constitution. With regards to First Amendment, the limit is drawn today at libel, slander, fire in a crowded theater, pornography, and many other restrictions upon free speech. Gag orders included. Surely that act is by definition unlawful? I still don't really understand in the UK. Parliament has unlimited power and people talk quite a bit about formal constitutions being a good model to be followed. It seems a bit sad the attempt to protect the population against government using a formal constitution doesn't seem to work in reality, even when the wording is as clear as day. I don't like these gag orders, but I can see times when they are needed. Each person has a right to a fair trial, so the courts sometimes have to suppress information from the public to avoid potential jurors seeing information about the case. They must only judge guilt based on what they hear in court, not in the media. The USA is a country of laws. It's possible that people submitting packages are submitting illegal malware, spyware, ransomware, software to steal crypto money, or run illegal ticket-buying bots. Ethical oversight is baked into the institutions through governance structures. Institutions aren't perfect. Also, there tend to be more complaints in the media about a country's institutions than in regions where there is not a free press. So the voices complaining online don't necessarily correlate with where the problems most lie. Describing the US as a country of laws is a little funny. The mere existence of laws does not imply much. Your examples are even weirder. How would such malfeasance justify clandestine observations? That is clearly disproportional, thus unethical. Claiming governance structures were baked into institutions is pure hopium. Democratic oversight means there must be transparency enabling you as a citizen to detect and react to misconduct, at least by proxy. The free press isn't free to report and investigate such subpoenas, obviously. If law enforcement was never allowed to engage in clandestine operations, then it would hamper their ability to build a case against and/or apprehend criminals. Case in point, organized crime syndicates. This is why the majority of your fellow citizens disagree with you and are fine with the current state of affairs. That seems like kind of a fabricated boogeyman, though. I have an extremely hard time thinking of anyone I know who's been affected by an organized crime syndicate, but I can immediately bring to mind a whole host of injustices suffered at the hands of government agencies, from bogus tickets to civil forfeiture to imprisonment for victimless crimes, and that's not even accounting for blanket stuff like X-Keyscore or spending my tax dollars on nonsense like the Iraq War, all arguably way worse than any criminal organization without government backing could ever hope to inflict. Sounds like they got a national security letter. I'm guessing some poor typo squatter managed to hit a gov agency and is about to get alphabet soup all over him. Get alphabet soup all over him. This is my new favorite alternative to vand or v-and. I think I'm gonna snarf that one too. It's just too good. Think I'm gonna snarf. Actually, I just looked it up and apparently that word means to eat or drink greedily. Not sure why you used it here. They log too much data about their users, so they should promptly update their policies to a stop logging so much, b delete all past logs, and c sharply limit the span of time until deletion of whatever logs they decide they really need to track for internal needs. They should avoid logging, and rapidly rotate logs, to thwart future subpoenas from the total surveillance state. PyPI is in a tough spot because they're also getting hit with an onslaught of malicious packages, which got to such a bad point they had to disable signups. How do they mitigate that kind of activity without logging basic metadata like the IP address that published a package? Also, as a user of PyPI, wouldn't you prefer that a malicious package is at least somewhat traceable to an attacker? Of course most would be behind a VPN, but it's better than nothing, or maybe it's not, depending on the trade-off. Note that the blog post doesn't say they handed the entire database over to the feds. They received 3 warrants scoped to specific packages and returned only the data they had available that was associated with those packages. We will not be releasing the usernames involved publicly or to the users themselves. Why not to the users themselves? Have they been prohibited from doing so? TFA does not say AFAICT. The subpoena probably includes a non-disclosure clause. A court order certainly would. The mechanics of non-disclosures on subpoenas is interesting and I don't totally understand it. By definition, a subpoena is a document authorized by someone other than a judge. By the number of malicious packages that site has hosted over the past few months, this was only a matter of time. I've lost track of the number of white hats that contact us with extortion requests after they used some dependency confusion attack. I love this level of transparency. Do you still love it if it enables a terrorist or otherwise very bad person to evade capture? Dumb legal question. What's the difference, if any, between "we've been subpoenaed" and "someone had a warrant for data"? Amazing how upset users here get over the very reasonable response to very normal police work. Apparently no plans to set up a canary. Is there any precedent for people not facing legal consequences for failing to update the canary? The subpoena probably says, and also update your warrant canary to say there were no legal requests. Now you're in contempt of court and in jail for 5 years while you wait for your compelled speech case to go to the Supreme Court. In general, I think it usually goes poorly when programmers invent clever legal workarounds. The legal system isn't a computer program. It's guys with guns. Isn't the idea that the U.S. government can't, technically, compel you to lie? Really weird. Anyone have some inside gossip on what this is about? The privacy of PyPI users is of utmost concern to PSF and the PyPI administrators, and we are committed to protecting user data from disclosure whenever possible. Don't lead with this. In this case, however, PSF determined with the advice of counsel that our only course of action was to provide the requested data. If you're going to say this, I'm not judging their decision. Maybe not going to prison is a greater concern to them. It's fine to just say that you thought it was best to comply because lawyer reasons that you don't have to disclose to anyone, counsel. Edit. Or say, there are bad people out there and we trust the DOJ. Whatever. Lighten up. Nobody's going to federal court to stop the DOJ from investigating botnets, carding rings, and ransomware scams, which is what these things are usually about. Nobody's mental model of PyPI was that they had signals priorities.